Just DRK. Okay, this is a little bit of a wordy question, but I want to read it, and it's a very, I think, nerd-esque football question that I'm going to go off on. So I'll let you answer it first.
You just take this with you, and I'll follow you this time. That's okay.
For years, it felt like Andy was always ahead of the league in things when it comes like having an edge in play design. I'm going off pure feeling, but it hasn't felt like that in several years. 2022 felt like Patrick had ascended to a mastery level of Andy's offense, only for a comedy of errors to occupy much of 2023. Injuries have played a big part of the disarray of this young season, but he has not seen anything to suggest that Andy Reid, the play designer, specifically the design, not necessarily the play calls, has still got it. Oh boy, there's a lot to unpack here.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome back to 21 Questions presented by Braden's Hope. This is our question and answer podcast where you guys ask us roughly 21 questions, and us here at KCSN try to answer it. Before we get started, I just would like to say thank you to Braden's Hope. We love partnering with them, and I just wanted to ask you guys, did you know that 47 children are diagnosed with cancer every single day in the U.S. alone? At Braden's Hope for Childhood Cancer, we are working to make a difference in that fight against childhood cancer. Braden's Hope funds cutting-edge research and find cures and safer, more targeted treatments for childhood cancer. But they can't do it alone, guys. They do need your help. So join us in helping them fight against childhood cancer. Your support can bring hope to families and save lives. Please visit bradenshope.org to learn more and get involved. Together, we can all make a difference. We appreciate any and all support that you guys can give to Braden's Hope. They are doing a phenomenal job. We love everything that they have going on. That said, we are excited to answer some questions from you guys right now, and I am excited to be joined by a fellow backwards hat buddy, Josh Briscoe. Find him on Twitter at JB Briscoe. Yeah, that's all I got. How you doing, bud?
That's all you need. A couple of backwards hat boys up here answering up to roughly 21 questions.
In the ballpark.
Colin Cowherd would not respect the energy you bring to today's show, and that's what I want. I want to bring an energy that Colin Cowherd would not respect. Our hats are on backwards, but our questions will be forward-facing.
This is often how I wake up every day. I kind of look in the mirror and I go, what would Colin Cowherd absolutely not respect right now? And that's how I decide to go about my day most of the time. Ever since Skip's stuff got tired, we got, old. It's all a trope now. Now we're on to Colin, buddy, let me tell you. We're going to get going here. We're just going to rip through a couple of these. I have some questions here that came in before I asked for questions. I'm assuming that a couple of these might be as a direct result to the Chiefs game that we just saw. So, right off the top, Arrow asks, ideal wide receiver trade target. We're not even beating around the bush here, Josh. Who is the one wide receiver that you would like the Chiefs to trade for before the trade deadline?
I will say, on the front end of all of it, this is the most reasonable these kind of pie-in-the-sky conversations have maybe ever been, right? Because we've covered that ground of, well, it's hard to bring someone in mid-season, especially if they don't know the offense. Andy even mentioned that on Monday. I think you've also tweeted about the fact that there is a long-term view that could make some sense here as well. If you're the Chiefs looking at a future with maybe half a season of Rashee Rice next year potentially, and right now Hollywood Brown's not under contract, I do think there are more options now than your typical, let's see if Demarcus Robinson wants to come on back, or what's MVS doing in Buffalo? Is Buffalo done with him yet? I think with all that being said, it's hard for me to get far beyond Amari Cooper. He makes a lot of sense. Also, you guys talked about this in the lab on Monday, and I was right there with you every step of the way on the receiver talk in terms of what he could bring to this offense, the fact that right now he's like the most tradable asset in the sport. Yeah. It makes sense. Devontae Adams would be a blast. Deontay Johnson, the Chiefs were apparently interested in over the course of the offseason. In terms of who's going to move now, I think Cooper's the most realistic, and I think I'd still probably give that less than a 50-50 chance of happening. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, no, I think Cooper is the first one that jumps to everyone's mind. The contract was designed to trade him, right? The contract was designed hey, we saw Deshaun Watson play. We know we can't contend. Let's make this guy very tradable so we can pick up some assets mid-year. So like he's got to be up there towards the top of the list. I will say this, like I agree that mid-season trades are very unlikely across the board. It's hard to get two teams that are going to agree on not just the compensation in the middle of the year, but a team that wants to add an important piece and a team that wants to get rid of an important piece. Like that's kind of tricky to find. So it's unlikely no matter who it's going to be. I do think that the Chiefs this year, to me, are kind of moving in a way differently than they normally do. I like, let's cut around, let's not beat around the bush for this one. They brought back Kareem Hunt. And I don't think any time over the last half a decade, if he was available, they would have brought back Kareem Hunt if they weren't going for a three-peat, maybe towards the end of some of their core players' potential playing time or towards the end of what this current roster's outlook, like the key components of this roster are going to be. He's back. So maybe there's a little bit more aggressiveness in that front office this year. Then you also fast forward to the draft. We're starting to get not a lot, but like words coming out of people that follow the draft, like Jim Nagy at the Senior Bowl, or Dane Brugler also mentioned this. It's not seen as a very top-heavy draft. Like it's not seen as a good draft class up in round one. Obviously, we'll see how the depth plays out. But if you were to move draft picks, you would want to do it in a draft class that people are saying, I don't know if it's that good, right? That's when you want to move your draft pick. So I do think there's enough stacking up to really play this game out and see what happens. This isn't the, let's just throw, keep our eyes on the pie in the sky and hope for the best. So Cooper's a good one. I keep coming back to Deontay Johnson as well. So I'm glad you mentioned him. I think the Chiefs were interested in him. I think the Chiefs were interested in him coming out of college, actually, and they just went a little bit of a different route, and they weren't able, they kind of had, I guess, he would have been the McCole Hardman year, if I'm not mistaken. They had McCole Hardman ranked a little bit higher, but I do think that they liked Deontay Johnson as well. He's balling out in Carolina. Similar to Cooper, he is affordable. The Chiefs would need to clear like $1 million in cap space or wait, I guess, 3 more games, roughly, to be able to afford him under their current cap. But I think he's affordable. Similar to Cooper, you can put a lot of targets in that guy, and where he separates himself is if you wanted to sign him for an extra year or two, I think you could do that for Deontay Johnson. He's only 28. You maybe could extend him and keep him around. Maybe you don't have to bring back or don't want to bring back Hollywood Brown next year. Deontay Johnson's the guy that you put with Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. So I see a little bit of like long-term upside with the Johnson that I might not see with some other guys. So that's kind of where I lean right now.
No, I think that's right. It would be bizarre, not impossible, but it would just be a strange thing to witness for the Chiefs to trade for a receiver and do the like instant extension thing, despite the fact that it does seem to be a player that they were interested in giving up assets for, and they would have extended. It's they just don't do that type of thing all that often within Andy Reid's offense of these long-term commitments for guys they haven't had in the system with all the intricacies. If they have that faith in Deontay Johnson, though, I think that does make an absolute ton of sense. And I think you're right that there is a different energy here. While in past years, I think Nate has alluded to this at times, where Clark Hunt was not going to move the first-round pick at the draft in Kansas City, and that generally he wants to keep the draft picks. And that's good business, too. Spend your draft picks, and if they're really good players, you get great deals against what they should be worth for years and years to come. That's a good way to spend your time and your effort. But I think most Chiefs fans at this point would say, if you want to push in all the chips for the three-peat, and also the kind of, you alluded to the window, if you want to push in the chips for probably the last 2 years of Travis Kelce, assuming that he does complete the contract that he signed this offseason, I don't want to watch Travis Kelce have to carry this offense on his back by himself again this year. We just saw him do that last year, and it worked in terms of Super Bowl. But I don't want that to have to be the option that the Chiefs go with. And it also makes Mahomes need to be perfect, which he has not been to this point this year.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. My gut feeling, I guess I haven't even got to fully say this yet. My gut feeling is the Chiefs go to the bye week. They try to, assuming Rashee Rice is missing a significant portion of time, which has not been confirmed yet when we're recording this, but assuming that, I think the Chiefs go to the bye week. They come out with a new quote-unquote plan on how to use their wide receivers, and they give another week or two to figure out if that's going to work or not. And if it doesn't, which, let's face it, it probably won't. This passing offense hasn't looked great with Rashee Rice. I don't think it's going to all of a sudden look great without him. But if it does, if that new plan doesn't look very good, come the week before the trade deadline, which I believe is the first week in November, maybe the last couple weekends of October, we start really getting into trade talk. So I do think it's going to be some time if it happens. But on that note, we got a question from Simu7, and this is perfect here. What is the most that you would trade for Deontay Johnson if you were to trade for him from the Carolina Panthers? Keep in mind, he was traded for a 7th-round pick, and then essentially Dante Jackson, a cornerback, a starting-ish level corner, went back to the Steelers for Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know what Carolina would need there because I forgot that it was essentially a player-for-player kind of swap at the time, and obviously the Steelers knew that they weren't going to get an extension done, and I don't know how Carolina got here upon further review. I remember the trade happening, of course, and I know where we're at now. But for the first couple of weeks, or not a couple of weeks, the first couple of like moments of like Chiefs Deontay Johnson, hand up, fully thought he signed the extension with the Panthers. Fully thought that they must have acquired him, gotten some sort of deal done. So when I went to his spot track page, and wait a second, it's just still all right, Carolina. I have a few questions about your guys' operation. But if the Panthers would part with him straight up for a 4th right now, I don't think I'd bat an eye. If the Chiefs were interested, and if this was the plan to bring him in and give him an extension, without thinking about what the initial trade terms were, I probably would have been willing to part. Would I part with Tennessee's 3rd? Maybe I'd part with the Chiefs' 3rd. I think. I don't know. I honestly had not really thought about what the price point would be because I thought about where the number would be lower because you're probably just taking your 10 games of him or whatever.
Yeah, I'm bad at this game. I'm bad at guessing contracts, and I'm bad at what teams are going to have to trade for a player. Like, I feel pretty good about being able to stack where Deontay Johnson is, I think, in like a wide receiver rankings. I just don't know what that translates to where teams are going to want to pay guys. So I'm really bad at this game. But you said I kind of went 4th round was about what I'm thinking. A 4th round would be specifically under the idea that the Chiefs would sign him to a multi-year deal of some kind. He would be in Kansas for more than just, 9 games plus the playoffs. And then I would be okay with the 4th round. If that had to become the Chiefs' late 3rd round, the Chiefs' 3rd round pick, whatever that is, I wouldn't be upset, but I definitely would try to hold on to that as long as possible. I would much rather it be the 4th. Obviously, it's a lower round pick, right? But now we're starting to get to the point to where I think you're starting to debate, is this really worth it? Is this not worth it? Is it better just to develop homegrown guys? And then I remember the Chiefs traded a 3rd round pick for Kadarius Toney, and I said,
that's exactly right.
Out the door this pick goes if we're going to sign a multi-year deal.
I was just pulling that up again because it was a 3rd and a 6th, right? And they get a 6th back. Maybe I can never remember.
Okay,
but if Kadarius Toney went for a 3rd,
hold on, we just did this after the lab. Do you know the 2 players that were picked for the Kadarius Toney trade? Trade, yeah. The Giants traded the 3rd round comp pick to the Raiders, who took Trey Tucker, a wide receiver, and then they took, I forget his name, I'm butchering now. It's a cornerback, also named Trey, is who the Giants took in the 6th round. Who do you think has more yards since that trade? Rookie wide receiver Trey Tucker, drafted by the Las Vegas Raiders half a year after Kadarius Toney was still playing football, or Kadarius Toney?
Can I get Darren Waller in this game? Where does he fit in does Kadarius Toney have the most yards of any of those players?
Nope. Trey Tucker does. Trey Tucker, 2nd-year wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders, has like 100 more yards than Kadarius Toney. Now, he's played more games, even though he's been in the NFL less. But yeah, it was that trade funny. And but yeah, 3rd round pick,
552 yards for Darren Waller and as a member of the Giants. So add that to your calculations. Who won the trade? Who knows?
Okay. 3-4-3 is Brian Cook nursing an injury. He's moving very gingerly and having trouble changing directions. I don't know about his movement. I don't think he's nursing an injury. We do have to remember that his ankle was extremely messed up towards the end of last year, right? Like, it might be a little bit before he feels 100% comfortable cutting, sprinting, exploding off that ankle, or there might be some physical limitations there. But even beyond that, just mentally, it might take him a little bit of time to work back into what they call game shape. I think we all remember Juan Thornhill, the year coming back after his major knee injury. Like, it took a while before he looked good, like just looked like he moved well, right? It took almost a whole year before he just looked like he moved well. This wasn't quite as bad, but it was still a significant injury for Cook. So we got to give him a little bit of grace, I think.
Yeah, and I think if memory serves, he started this season out looking pretty fresh and pretty spry. Might be at a point now where you put 3 games of mileage back on that ankle, and then in week 4 you start to maybe feel it again a little bit. I'll also add that his one, like, air quotes, low light against LA was just Justin Herbert doing an incredible thing. I watched that again this morning, and I have to imagine more than anything else, Brian Cook was simply surprised that was a touchdown, because he was in front of, he was 90% blocking the path for Justin Herbert. He put the ball in a place where I don't think Cook expected it to be. I don't know that anybody in the stadium expected it to be there other than Herbert, and he put it on a dot. So I'm nowhere near panicking on Cook right now, but certainly bears watching.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just DRK. Okay, this is a little bit of a wordy question, but I want to read it, and it's a very, I think, nerd-esque football question that I'm going to go off on. So I'll let you answer it first.
You just take this with you, and I'll follow you this time. That's okay.
For years, it felt like Andy was always ahead of the league in things when it comes like having an edge in play design. I'm going off pure feeling, but it hasn't felt like that in several years. 2022 felt like Patrick had ascended to a mastery level of Andy's offense, only for a comedy of errors to occupy much of 2023. Injuries have played a big part in the disarray of this young season, but he has not seen anything to suggest that Andy Reid, the play designer, specifically the design, not necessarily the play calls, has still got it. Oh boy, there's a lot to unpack here. Yes, I think Andy Reid is still an elite play designer when the play designs we were talking about are getting free runners. Whether we want to mean gadget play, whether we want to mean a crossing route, whether we want to mean some kind of mesh concept that is going to get a free runner, a free player that is uncovered or in a super advantageous position, I do think that is still in the Andy Reid bag. However, a lot of what Andy Reid does is pure old school West Coast offense. With Mahomes, they have definitely extended some of the shallow routes out to be a little bit deeper. They've definitely got into a little bit more fluid and not paid as much attention to detail as you would get in a traditional like Walsh style West Coast offense. But the issue that I think we have seen the last 2 years on top of all the mistakes, Andy Reid is also very stuck in his ways. It's a West Coast style offense with billions of crossing routes. A lot of it is coming off of certain depth drops. It's all like shallow crossers. It's all 3x1. It's all trying to flood zones in a certain third of the field. They're trying to build these triangles, high, low, left, right. The problem is defenses now have spent the last 6 years planning to stop this because the Chiefs are beating everybody. Also, they're playing split field coverage, 2 high guys. So you're going to have one set of coverage on the left, one set of coverage on the right. You can flood wherever you want. You can send as many bodies as you want to these things. You're no longer pulling guys. You're not getting the wide receiver advantage. You're not having 4 receivers to 3 defenders in one area of the field at the same rate that you did 4 or 5 years ago. And I do not think that Andy has done a great job adjusting to that so far. We can argue that's because Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore are playing a lot of reps. And like, even when you do scheme them open, it doesn't work. But I think even you watch the better players on this team, a lot of how they win is still the exact same stuff. And they're not winning in the ways other elite offenses in this team are winning. Brandon Ayuk, Nico Collins. I know these are great wide receivers, but look at the Rams. They're playing undrafted free agent wide receivers, and these guys are catching 20-yard digs on the regular over the middle of the field versus the same coverage the Chiefs see. Andy doesn't really put that in his play sheet. So yeah, I do think the current NFL modern defense is perfectly aligned to play well against what Andy Reid does, and I don't think him as a play designer going into the year has done a great job adjusting to that to this point. Maybe that will change as we go forward.
I feel pretty good because a couple of things you mentioned there, some things I was pondering and I feel validated. So the only couple other things that I'll tack on there is that one, we have seen, and this was already, I'm sure, happening before kind of this most recent era, but it's become more and more evident. You can see how other teams are evolving the sport of football, the entire idea of offense. You can go to the Shanahan tree and you can go into to LA in terms of the individual coaches who branch out and then take on their own new take of whatever their Shanahan trunk is, their branch evolves. Andy Reid is the trunk at this point of his version of this West Coast offense, right? As you see these evolutions and these iterations, the Chiefs offense did undergo a massive change and massive iterations about 6 years ago when Patrick Mahomes took over. For several years there, I think the evolution of Andy Reid's offense was now you have a quarterback who can make every throw in the playbook. You have a guy that is stressing defenses out in a way that Andy Reid had simply never had before. And so I don't know, and I'm sure there was schematic evolution. Andy Reid is not using the same binder that he was using in 2018. But when Mahomes is the pace car now, when he is the thing that is leading your evolution and he's the thing that the NFL has never seen, the defenses have never seen before, that's a tremendous advantage. You want to have a quarterback who can do that. It does kind of feel to me, also anecdotally, like we are in a point, partially from last year's struggles and some mirroring issues now. It's partially personnel, certainly maybe more personnel related than coaching related. but it does feel like we may be due for a little bit of a twist on not the core concepts, but just an extra little flavor that you can get somewhere in the buffet. And right now, the Chiefs' offense has looked kind of like this very, very similar offense. Post Tyreek Hill, I guess you get those big adjustments. You had the RPO renaissance for a year, 2 seasons, maybe year and a half. I don't know. And that seems to have largely come and gone throughout much of the NFL. Are they gonna end up running more play action if the interior? We talked about this on Tuesday's Weird Games. Are they going to run a little more play action if the interior offensive line is having a little more trouble setting the depth that they want to have for the pocket there? Does Patrick Mahomes turning his back to the defense help his eyes stay up, as that's been something we've seen over these last couple of weeks? I don't know how much they're going to lean into that, but I am very interested to see what this offense looks like in Week 10, because it does feel like they have plenty of excuses to do some little iterations over the course of this year.
Yeah, and that's always the hardest part with something like this, is separating player execution from what the play design is going to be. Because even we go to this Chargers game, I can pick out 3 plays and make one guy on the Chiefs offense play better on that play, and then you would probably getting 3 explosive or really big plays that I think the Chiefs were trying to draw up that kind of would have worked out, right? And you put those 3 plays into what the Chiefs did, they probably score at least 2, if not 3 more times. The offense looks great, and we're all super happy. So execution does matter. I just kind of also look at it when the Chiefs when Andy's scheme wins and there is a free runner, there is a wide open player somewhere, or they completely have an extra blocker and no defender for that guy to block in the run game. Where does that come? For the Chiefs, that comes at the line of scrimmage. That comes with the end around stuff. That comes off the motion, and maybe they leak out somebody for, a 10, 12-yard gain. Then I go watch some other offenses around the league right now, and their free runners are touchdowns, 50-yard touchdowns. Their free runners are 20-yard digs over the middle of the field, and it's because the safeties are occupied. It's just they're getting their free plays, their gimme plays seem to be more consequential than what Andy Reid's are versus the current type of defense that we're seeing. Hopefully come bye week, there's an adjustment there though, right? Now you're adding in the wide receiver conundrum. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But I do think that maybe it's even less of Andy Reid falling behind the times and more so defenses have spent 7 years chasing him and they finally caught him at the same time as the Chiefs personnel is maybe not what it once was. And it's kind of created this balancing act. I just do think that Andy's kind of run the same, not concepts, not plays, but has worked from the same principles. For the past
same ideology since Mahomes got here. Yeah.
The core is all the same. All right. No, that was good. I like that because this has been building in my head for a while and it doesn't ever flow out perfectly in the lab or in a post-game show. So I'm glad. That was a great question, DRK. I do like that. DRK, also another one. If Clyde comes back and Pacheco eventually comes back, do they carry 5 running backs or how do you think that works?
So, obviously, hoping and wishing for all the best in the world for Clyde. And if he is able to return, I guess by the time he's eligible to return in the present moment as we record this, I guess. And we'll see when he actually does make his return, if he does want to make that return or is able to make that return. And with that being said, I can't come up with a situation in which he's higher than running back 3 right now. Kareem Hunt against the Chargers showed more burst and more juice than I've seen from Clyde in years. Carson Steele has a utility, I think, still, but if the fumbling problem remains a problem, he will devolve back into a fullback. And Samaje Perine is a better third down back than Clyde Edwards-Helaire has ever been, even at Perine's older age. So I have to imagine, and this would be a really unceremonious end for what was very fun for a little while. If they really want to get Clyde back in the mix, I think they could carry 4 running backs early on. They have the roster spot for it now. They've been running with a roster spot. They could have kept Clyde in to this point. I don't think they've been at 53 since the 53-man cutdowns, essentially. But I think Carson Steele's probably your odd man out at the moment if you get to that 5-man group, because he's the one who has earned the least trust to this point. He earned some trust in the preseason, has lost some by putting the ball on the ground twice in season. I think Pacheco is RB1 when he's healthy. Kareem Hunt had more juice than anybody currently healthy on Sunday, and I think Samaje Perine's your third down guy. If Clyde gets into the mix as RB4, I guess that's fine. or 3 before Pacheco comes back, I guess that's fine. I'd rather see them lean on Hunt and Pirine.
I think it gets tricky because I almost think that you have to come down to Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Carson Steele, and they do 2 entirely different things.
Yeah.
And Carson Steele's 2 fumbles are not great, right, for this team, right? They've not been great to start. That's obviously got him moved back to even the current iteration of what this running back rotation is. But when Clyde is available and he's in game shape and they're ready to trot him out there, until Pacheco comes back, there might be space for, all 4 of these running backs, Kareem Hunt, Pirine, Steele, and Clyde. But once Pacheco comes back and you got to make that decision, I don't know if Clyde isn't the one fighting for the roster spot with Carson Steele there. And Carson Steele has probably shown enough that you can't just toss him onto your practice squad and not have somebody else come around lurking. Like, he's got game film now. He's put enough out there that another team might be interested in him. So it'll be dicey. It'll be interesting to see how they treat that as that goes on. We actually have some more Kareem Hunt questions coming up in a second, but we will get to those right after this quick break.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSN21. That's mintmobile.com/KCSN21. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/KCSN21. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Welcome back to 21 Questions, our question and answer podcast where we answer your guys' questions. If you ever want to ask questions, you do got to make sure you get into the KCSN Discord. And you might be asking yourself, hey, how do I do that? I want to ask a question. Go to kcsn.substack.com. Make sure you subscribe. In your welcome email, you get an invite to the KCSN Discord. And it's just, our nice little community where we get to talk about the Chiefs and all other things, sports related, not sports related, but it's in a controlled environment. And we have a lot of nice, awesome people in there that can help you with a lot of different stuff. So you can go in there. That's where we're pulling all of these questions from today. I did say we have more Kareem Hunt questions. We have another one coming up. But first, there's actually like a hot rumor out there right now that we got asked about that it's coming from Mike Denny here. Can you confirm or deny the rumor that Kent was supposed to be on 21 Questions this week, but because of his baby soft hands and his 3-cone time, the Chiefs are currently trying him out as a wide receiver?
I'm just here so I don't get fined. I am not the Kent Swanson correspondent. Hey, listen. You know what the Chiefs really need right now? You know what the Chiefs could really, really use? What we thought they were going to have that they don't have that would really help this offense?
What?
Hollywood.
I don't...
One Hollywood in, one Hollywood out.
I don't think anything can be said. I think that's it. I mean, okay. Mike, you got the answer right now. Maybe the Chiefs and Josh are on the same page, I think.
Sources say.
Casey from KC did kind of have another Kareem Hunt question. I think it piggybacked a little bit on what you were talking about with what you saw from him in his first game. Did your opinions on Kareem Hunt's playing capabilities change after the Chargers game? Personally, yeah, they did a little bit. I said when the Chiefs signed him, I went back and I'd watched a lot of, Hunt stuff from 2023. And then I went back and I even watched a game from 2022 to make sure that, I knew he was recovering from a sports hernia injury or surgery. And I didn't know how much that impacted him. So I did watch a 2022 game. I didn't think he moved that much different between those 2 years. That looked about the same to me. The guy we saw though for the Chiefs moved better than those guys. Like I had said, he's still going to have power, contact balance, and I really like his vision and how he operates as a runner. I think it's heads levels above any Chiefs running back that they currently have, including Isaiah Pacheco. I just think he understands how to run the football, work with blocks. He has a lateral agility, the ability to make some jump cuts that nobody else on this team has. Like he can change gaps very well once he's pressing the line of scrimmage. So I liked the style of runner he was and thought that he would fit well for what they wanted. But then seeing his burst coming downhill in that first game, like a guy that's probably not in shape at all, he was getting downhill pretty quick. We talked about it on the lab. He had 2 runs over 15 miles an hour, and like these weren't long runs, right? His longest run was, I think, 10 yards, and he got to 15 miles an hour twice. That's pretty good for a guy, his type of runner that he is. So yeah, I was pretty impressed with how Kareem Hunt, got to be careful here, Hunt looked in that first game there for the Chiefs, especially the burst that he showed.
I 100% absolutely had my opinions on him changed upon further evidence. I knew, to your point, I knew that he would have the best vision of the group. The contact balance is a great point. One of the things that made him so special during his first tenure here. I knew he had those things. I knew those were true facts about him at some point. I felt optimistic at the time, and my optimism reached nowhere near what we actually saw on the field. I thought, he could come in. You could see Hunt on the back of his jersey and see him back in a Chiefs uniform, and he'll be able to step in without costing the Chiefs anything. That's been the issue with Carson Steele. He has cost the Chiefs with the fumbles that he's had, right? When he's kept the ball, he's been totally replacement level, acceptable, all of that. Just, high and tight young man. But what Kareem Hunt was against the Chargers was an absolute net positive, and those tools all coming together with what looked like youthful legs. You can even, if you want to kind of try to play both sides a little bit, you could say, he also was the only player on the field who hadn't played an NFL football game this year. You have fresh legs in that way. He wasn't in training camp. He didn't play in the preseason. But it's week 4. It's not like, Charles Omenihu coming back as a superhero halfway through last season where he was just suspended and staying in football shape. To your point, Kareem Hunt might end up in better shape over the next few weeks in terms of getting back to where you need to be at a football level. The wear and tear is going to come. He doesn't need to be running back 1 all the way through February. But not only do I think he's the best active, healthy running back on the roster right now, I now believe, and I did not think this prior, I now believe that he and Isaiah Pacheco, in the inverse order, are a 1-2 once Pacheco comes back, in a way that I don't think Pacheco has legitimately had a number 2 running back that good behind him. And not in that role. Jerick McKinnon, different animal, right? Yeah. But like when Clyde was the guy who would go in when Pacheco got banged up or needed a rep off or whatever, it cost the offense some juice. If you said you're running your offense with Isaiah Pacheco as RB1, and then for whatever reason Kareem Hunt has to come in, that fall off is a lot narrower than I imagined before he got back on the field in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I think the Chiefs right now on the year are second in rushing success rate. I think if you take away QB runs, and just do running back runs, or remove wide receivers and just look at running back runs, I believe they're first. And success rates, they are successful running the football. They're not very dynamic, right? And I don't know if Kareem Hunt necessarily fixes that per se, especially at this point in his career, but they're very successful. So what I like about Kareem Hunt is his ability to go out there and they can say, we're going to run inside zone, outside zone, duo, which they don't do much of, power, counter. We're going to do all these different runs. Kareem Hunt, you can do all those, right? You can do every single one of those exactly how you can be a successful runner on all those, whereas I think even Pacheco to some extent, but it's definitely Steele, definitely Pirine, definitely Clyde when he's back, you're limited in how you can use all those guys. So I think the versatility I already thought was going to be there, but if you're now going to be able to match, the same burst essentially through the line of scrimmage everybody else has, and this doesn't mean that he's as fast as Pacheco. I know Pacheco's faster, but just the way they get to the line and through the first 2 to 3 yards, he's about as quick as anybody else. So I was impressed, and I think that he can continue to be a weapon for this run game that's been successful so far this year. Hokie Chief, based on what we've seen for the first 2 games, what's your prediction for the Chiefs' final win-loss record?
Oh boy, I haven't looked at the rest of the schedule yet.
Oh, you got a schedule game it now.
All right, that's a win. That's a loss. That's a win. No, so I don't know who the number 1 receiver is going to be in 2 weeks or 6 weeks or 10 weeks. The defense is performing at a level that's even better than I had expected coming into the year, and I still had relatively high expectations, but I thought there'd be some post-L'Jarius Sneed growing pains, and I thought that the edge rush issues would cause them a little bit of trouble. The edge rush has had some issues without Omenihu, but it hasn't caused them trouble yet, which is kind of a remarkable thing. The offense looks really, really similar to last year's at this point. How many games on the rest of the schedule, even with the exact current roster that we're talking about, how many losses are you almost borderline expecting? They could lose in San Francisco and it wouldn't surprise you. They could lose in Buffalo, it wouldn't surprise you. They can lose at home to the Texans, seeing where those teams are at almost at Christmas. Yeah. There's like 3 understandable losses, and then you could mix in the Saints on Monday. You could add Pittsburgh on Christmas. Who knows where they're going to be, right? That game might be more important to them than it is to Kansas City. We'll figure that out when we get there. I have a hard time talking myself into more than 5 losses, even in kind of like a disjointed offense scenario, and I don't think I'm expecting more than 3. So 13-4, you drop a couple games you're kind of on the fence about, a couple stupid ones, and there's some growing pains in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think 13-4 is fair. I think I had them at 14 or 15 wins coming into the year. It feels, the way that they've looked, it feels maybe a little homerish to only drop them, down to 13 wins from there, right? Like, I'm looking at that, but then I'm also thinking they can't really play a lot worse than they have a couple of these games, right? And they're still winning them. And outside of this game against the Chargers, and it was mostly because it was the Chargers backups, it's not like they've played the worst competition in the NFL. They've actually played a pretty hard schedule with the Ravens. The Fraud Goals seem to be at least like they are going to be a competent team, even if their defense is horrendous against every non-Chiefs named team in the NFL. And then the Falcons are going to be in like their division race picture. It's like they've played a solid level of competition. They haven't played great, and they're 4-0. So yeah, I think 13 wins seems like a pretty realistic goal that if they go below that, I'll be a little surprised. If they lose all those games that we pegged against like tough competition and then another 1 or 2 games of the questionable ones, I might be a little surprised at that point. But 13 wins seems pretty reasonable, I think, at this moment in time, unless they go make a trade for a wide receiver. And like bringing in a wide receiver middle of the year shouldn't necessarily immediately snap back to everything okay. But if Amari Cooper all of a sudden becomes a Chief, that 13 wins kind of starts to seem like the absolute floor rather than like a realistic middle ground of everything else.
And I think I had them at 14-3, assuming that they would lose to the Ravens or Bengals in the first 2 weeks, which obviously they didn't do. So it's like a +1 expectation. I would have taken 3-1 through the first 4 weeks, essentially.
Yeah.
And they ran that slate. So it is, and it's also very funny because I understand where this leads us, which is that the Chiefs have lost their number 1 and number 2 wide receivers for the year-ish, and their number 1 running back for a long time. And we're like, yeah, I mean, they're probably still going to be the 1 seed in the AFC. That's remarkable, and that says more about Mahomes and the defense than anything, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Here's another guy that kind of has had an impact, I think, on this the game so far. Leighton Y44 asks, is Matt Araiza better than Tommy Townsend? And should we re-sign him after the season is over? Now, before you answer, I got the stats. I'm ready for this.
Hell yeah, good, because I don't.
Matt Araiza is averaging over 50 yards per punt this year. Tommy Townsend's highest is 50.4. That's pretty much what Araiza's at 50.1 right now. So Tommy Townsend's best season was 50.4. Matt Araiza is matching that. Currently, Tommy Townsend's averaging only 45 yards per punt. Then we're jumping over to the net yards per punt. So this is subtracting the return yardage. We're sitting just under 45 yards for Araiza. That, again, is just like a half yard under Tommy Townsend's career high for the Chiefs, which was 45.5. Right now, Tommy Townsend is at 41 net yards per punt. And then finally, this is my favorite one. 67% of Matt Araiza's kicks are falling inside the 20-yard line right now. The career high for Tommy Townsend is 54%. 67% of Araiza's kicks going into the red zone, only 54 for Tommy Townsend's best season. So, very tiny sample size. Let me be very clear. Matt Araiza's punted the ball, 12 times? 12 times so far. Statistically, he is outperforming Tommy Townsend even during his best year, his all-pro year for the Kansas City Chiefs.
I think on Araiza, I think that this is anecdotal, so maybe I'm wrong, but I think there were 2 or 3 punts that you wanted to see him angle out of bounds and ended up being touchbacks at this
first
point.
Week. Baltimore's rough, if I remember. I think
that makes sense. It's the first time he's punted in a regular season NFL game ever. I'll also say, to make the math easy for you, he's an exclusive rights free agent after this season, and so the Chiefs should be able to hold on to him for basically no money, and then they should, and I think they will, This is not a team that should ever spend real money on a punter. It's barely a team that should spend real money on a kicker, but when you have probably the best in football and you play these obviously big moment, high octane games where sometimes you need a kicker to go win you a playoff game or lock down a Super Bowl, that's the logic for paying for special teams there. And again, for a kicker with less clout than Harrison Butker, I would still be second guessing that. For Butker, I don't really. For Ariza, half the time he punts, Andy shouldn't be sending him out there at all anyway. So have the best kicker, the best punter you can for as minimal money as possible. Ariza will fulfill that again next year, and I think maybe for multiple years. But those details aren't completely on Spot Track right now.
Yeah, and they should bring him back they don't have to pay him a ton of money next year, so you're bringing him back then. Any punter that you can get quality punts out of, really it's going to come out of this. When it comes playoff time or a must-win game and he has to make a good punt, does he? Because we've seen him this year, he's made some really nice punts like down the stretch to set the defense up well to force the opponent to go the length of the field. That was the one area where Tommy Townsend did struggle a little bit. His late game punting in playoff games was actually where he had some of his worst punts. And this is, I guess like me working it purely off memory and feel. So maybe it's not the quantity. Maybe it was just the fact that there was a couple that stick out. But it felt like Tommy punted great most of the time. And then a couple pressure punts went poorly. So if Ariza doesn't do that, if he can just keep doing what he's done so far this year and pinning teams deep late, and catching terrible snaps over his head, then, that's big money. That's what we're looking for. All right, we're down to our final two questions. One of them I know you're super prepared for, so I want to save that for the end. That's going to be our closer. That's our closer. So we have this from Positivity Toasty. Go for it. Joshua, which Dungeons and Dragons class or subclasses would you give to other KCSN members?
I saw this. Go ahead. Stall for me.
I was going to give you a second here. I was going to give you a second for this because we actually did the year that we were creating KCSN. I think it was during COVID and stuff. So everybody was doing all the online stuff and things like that. We were all talking on video chats all the time. Craig has played D&D, I think, a good bit. Like he knows a little bit about it. We had joked around about trying to play like virtually at some point in time. And like I've never played before in my life. I would. I just never have. It's never been something that's been part of like the circles of people I ran with. And so like I would happily play. So we were trying to mess around with what classes or everything we would be. Craig reminded us, but I didn't remember this. Shockingly, I chose that I would be a barbarian. I don't even remember what that means. I just remember looking into it like, oh yeah, I'd probably pick the barbarian. It seemed like it would be right up my alley. Now you can assign me something else, but I was trying to filibuster a little bit and say we did think about this before.
I appreciate that. And it's tough. Because I am more qualified to talk about D&D than most people in sports media, but I'm less qualified to talk about D&D than most people who love D&D. This is my space in the Venn diagram here. And actually, I am in the midst of my first campaign as a player that my wife Renee is DMing for some friends, and there may be some more coming down the line on that. We'll see. There may be some hashtag content. I don't want to say too much, but I have just started, after years of listening to some Dungeons and Dragons podcasts and watching. I'll give free endorsements here for the Adventure Zone, which was what kicked it off for me, and Dimension 20 on Dropout. They do video as well. Huge Dropout fan in general. Dimension 20 on Dropout, unfathomably good across the entire many arcs that they've done there. With that being said, I think I'm going to knock out the easy ones. Seth is a cleric for sure. He's praying, he's healing, he's reading the word of the Lord, whatever the Lord is in this instance, it's D&D. So Seth is definitely a cleric. I think Kent is a bard. It's really about the performance, getting your voice out there, often singing in that instance. I haven't heard Kent sing a lot, but I feel like he's got friends in low places, so Seth is a cleric. Kent is a bard. I'm going to say that Nate is a warlock because there's like a natural element to that beyond wizardry where it's like learning your spells and everything. I believe warlock is more sort of in tune with like your ancestry. I think warlocks that's passed down through generations. So it's about you have the natural ability that then you can refine. Nate is a natural who is essentially a magician at this point. That's my warlock. suggestion for him. I think Craig is the wizard. I'm currently playing a wizard, and especially as you level up, it just gets harder and harder. I think Craig is a wizard. You might be a rogue, man. You've got some sneaky in the shadows, come out, pick a lock, and get back into the shadows kind of thing. I think I might push you in a rogue direction, and then Tucker's a barbarian.
Let's go.
I think I want Tucker with a big club with spikes on the end. That's important to me.
Now, what are you? You said you're playing as a wizard, right?
Yeah.
What are you now, though? If you were to redo now, or you were to put yourself into a class, not for an actual game, just in general, what are you?
I wish I was playing a barbarian because it seems like it would be much easier. I think me as a person, unfortunately, may also be a bard. I don't. Too much of my life is spent telling people to look at me and to listen to what I have to say. So I think Kent and I may both be bards in that. Where I'm not a ranger, I'm not a fighter, I'm not a monk. Maybe Craig's a monk. I can be a wizard and Craig can be a monk if we need. I'll talk it out with him, but I think I may also be closer to a bard than I had first considered.
All right, perfect. No, that was great. All right, now we got from K Gummeasure. This is the moment everyone's been waiting for.
Okay,
if
fantastic.
you could cook and eat a Pokemon like you would any live animal, which would be the most intriguing thing to try?
So, I have a PowerPoint about this. If people want it, maybe I might put it in the Discord so people in the Discord can look at it.
People have asked. Yeah.
I need to make an edit, or maybe a couple. But a while back, one of my friends pitched the PowerPoint party, where you make a PowerPoint on a topic of your choosing, and then you get there and you go through your PowerPoint and make your presentation to a bunch of your friends who can ask you follow-up questions, etc. And my PowerPoint was called "Legality and Morality Aside, the 5 Pokemon I'd most like to eat." So, you also have a top 5, right? Is that you've also prepared a top 5?
I did make 5. Mine's not going to be near as researched as yours, but
That's
do
okay.
have a solid top 5.
Look, you want to go 5, 5, 4, 4, 3, 3,
Yeah.
and just kind of back and forth the whole way down? Fantastic.
Perfect.
My number 5 is Vanillite. It's the fresh snow Pokemon. It looks like a little ice cream cone. I think you have to eat it at this level and not at either of the other 2 evolutions because it looks like they get spoiled or something. They get sort of this haunting look. Go ahead and get it at Vanillite. It's sustainable, it's safe, it's healthy, it's made of ice and snow. Maybe not the most flavorful. You hope there's a little bit of a vanilla flavor to it. You can even leave the ice, throw it back, and let it continue to. You can use it to sustainably source your Vanillite. So I'm going to say that's my number 5.
That's good. Behind the curtains, I only know the Pokemon from first generation. We're talking red, blue, yellow
Still good.
from the games.
Yes.
So this is all mine are coming from those old guys there. We're going number 1. We're going with Snorlax.
Are we going 1 or 5? Is this 1 or 5?
This is 5. We're starting with Snorlax. Now, why?
Delicious.
We all know this. Animals that move a lot don't taste as good. Big meat has taught us one thing. Big meat's taught us something. The less the meat moves, the better it usually tastes. So Snorlax, not moving a lot, that's a bonus. We're talking 1,000 pounds. Listen, I got food for a long time. Even if it's only okay, I got a lot of food. We kind of went with the quantity choice, but I also think that Snorlax meat's gonna be pretty tender. So Snorlax right off the bat.
That's fantastic. Get Bearcat a slab of Snorlax. Let's see what happens,
Yes.
man. You low and slow that thing. You pan-sear it. I don't think pan-sear is also a Pokemon. I don't think you can go wrong cooking a Snorlax. I love that.
I think so.
Number 4 on my list is my most controversial.
Mm-hmm.
It's Mr. Mime. Now listen, I don't want to do this, but somebody has to. We have to stop Mr. Mime. This is like hunting and eating an invasive species. We must cull the population of Mr. Mimes. Somebody had already photoshopped Mr. Mime beef jerky. It's not. Listen, this is for the betterment of humanity and Pokemon kind. We've just got to eliminate Mr. Mime. So that's number 4 for me. Not for culinary reasons, but for moral ones.
Fair. All right. Mine's also probably a little controversial, and this is definitely for science. We're doing this one for science. We just got to know. Ditto.
Oh, I love that.
I don't even know what we're doing. I don't even know how we're cooking it. I don't know if are we poaching this thing? Are we searing it up? I don't know. I have no clue what we're doing. Are we? Is it? Yeah, is this a sous vide thing? I don't know how we're cooking it. We might have to try. But Ditto's gotta, we gotta try it out. Is it cotton candy? Do you have to just treat it like cotton candy? I don't know.
You could definitely poach a Ditto, I think.
That's what I'm thinking.
A sous vide is a great call. Put it in a little vacuum sealed bag and because I do fear that it's going to have kind of a jello-y texture, but you get that thing in a vacuum sealed bag and you sous vide it to a perfect point. That's going to come out melting like the bacon burnt ends from Chef Jay. I think that's a great call.
Or does it come out like a soup? Did I just make a soup in the bag? I don't know. I don't know what's happening. Yeah, I don't know what's happening there.
Wow.
Right?
Incredible.
Does it, if you put it in like a crock pot with everything else, does it just take on the taste and texture of everything else? Or does it have its own thing? I don't know what's going on here. This is a science move.
It could be kind of a tofu kind of deal because, again, it could take on the flavor of everything around it. Or if you put it in there with, let's say, my number 3, Farfetch'd, you just end up with 2 delicious Farfetch'd in there. I don't know.
Right.
Farfetch'd is number 3 for me, I think, for some obvious reasons. It's a duck Pokemon that carries a leek around. I love Farfetch'd. I'd rather have it as my partner Pokemon than as my dinner. But in this circumstance, it's such a versatile combo, the leek and the duck. You can make it into so many different dishes. And the Galarian form has a higher leek to bird ratio, but it seems grumpier. So I think a trained chef may need to get involved there. Surfetch'd, a more recent evolution, basically turns its leek into a sword or a spear of some sort. I don't think I can eat Surfetch'd. I think it would hurt me. But the Galarian Farfetch'd may be even better. That's my number 3.
All right. I went back and forth because I was pretty good on I knew my top 2, what I wanted them to be. This one, I think we're going with I don't know how to pronounce this, Executor.
Yes.
So
the evolution of Execute.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. It looks like a giant palm tree with coconuts.
Executor, I don't know.
I don't know. I was like, is this eggs? What is it? There's coconuts, right? And so I was looking through the Pokemon that I'm trying to remember in my brain, and I did actually have to pull some up because I don't remember a lot that I felt like would be a vegetable / fruit / something besides a meat, right? Yeah. So I was looking, I saw this guy. I was like, okay, I want to get a little bit of balance here. We want to get some. It's not exactly green, but we're getting some coconut in here. We could have coconut milk. We could just eat it raw. We got a couple different things we can do here. So I just wanted to get something a little refreshing, get a little drink in here, a little bit of coconut flesh. I think coming from the inside of these little heads. I think this is the move. I think we had to get something besides a meat going because I know these last 2. We got a lot of with the Snorlax. We got a lot of meat coming.
If they are eggier, you can steam them in the palm leaves. I think that's...
Yeah.
What's going on in the stalk or in the trunk itself? What's in there? I don't know. Let's find out. Let's cut that baby open.
Exactly. Is there yolks? Are these eggs? I don't know. Are these yolks? Are these coconuts? I can't...
Execute is yolks, but they're eggs on the ground. When they're still attached in the evolved form, I don't know what happens inside those shells. It looks very coconutty at that point.
Right, and it's like one website I looked at Pokemon.com says category coconut, but then I'm like, but it says egg. It's like I don't know what's happening here.
Pokemon evolutions do crazy things. I think I'm totally happy to join you on this journey to eat these Pokemon. Okay,
what you got for number 2?
Number 2 for me may be controversial because my number 2 is Jigglypuff. Now listen,
considered it.
I don't know what's going on in there. Is it going to be light and airy? Is it going to be rich and fatty? Is it sweet or savory? Is it dense or is it decadent? It can fill with air and float, but naturally it retains its shape. It's not like a Drifloon situation where it's just a balloon that you can pop. Could you stuff a Jigglypuff? Put some stuffing in there and then roast the whole Jigglypuff? I think it's hiding something, and I think whatever it's hiding is delicious. Also, Jigglypuff puts you to sleep with its song. I don't need tryptophan ever again. Thanksgiving comes around, you eat Jigglypuff for Thanksgiving, you're asleep in the first quarter of the first game that comes on after. This thing is giving you a good night's sleep.
Ooh, yeah, it's like a turkey replacement there. I like this. I like this. Well, that's going to make some Thanksgiving watching pretty good. All right, number 2, I knew I wanted to get in the water. I knew I wanted to get something out here. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of very obvious options. I still went pretty obvious with this. I wanted to get a little weird with it, but then the more I thought about it, like a lot of water Pokemon are like dragon related. I don't know how dragon's going to taste. I mean, we could try it, right? But I don't know. I wanted to go safe because my number one, I felt was a little out there. So we went to Seeking. I believe that is the...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Goldeen. It's a big old fish. I'm hoping because it's big, I'm hoping that it's got, and it's got the horn on it. I'm hoping we get something similar to swordfish. Love swordfish. Not a fan of fishy fish, but you give me like a nice, like meaty, hearty fish. I'm a big fan. So I was trying to find the biggest water fish Pokemon that I could. We're going Seeking. I think that it's I mean, I don't know. I don't have a lot to explain on mine. I unfortunately didn't get to make a PowerPoint on it, but I did need a water in there. And we got Seeking coming in strong at number 2.
I think that's a great choice. I also think it's awesome that we did not overlap any. We were going to have 10 different Pokemon in our individual top 5s, and I have enjoyed and endorsed all of yours. Number 1 for me, I'm going to have to explain why it's number 1 in a second. But number 1 for me is Cherubi. Now, it basically looks like a pair of cherries, okay? You have one bigger one and then one smaller one off to the side. It's not the most adventurous edible Pokemon, but I like cherries and pretty much all fruit. And for Cherubi, the lore is that the second smaller sort of cherry ball on the stem contains the nutrients needed for its evolution. So it's packing a crazy nutritional value. But that's not why it's number 1. It's number 1 because this edible fruit Pokemon is Pokemon number 420. Eat the big one if it's your first time, okay? Do not eat the little one that's packed with all of the air quotes good stuff. But if you eat both of the Cherubi, I cannot guarantee what's going to happen with you. You may just need to ride the wave. Have a plan for your first Cherubi eating experience. But given the opportunity, you pop both of those little cherry balls in from Pokemon number 420, and you ride that Poke Wave all the way back to maybe back to your mom's house. Maybe tell her, Mom, I did it. I completed my Pokedex, or at least I found the most important one. Pokemon 420, Cherubi is the one that I personally would be most excited to try because I really think Pokemon's hiding some secrets in there.
I love it. I love the explanation. I love that there was a lot there. That's good. That's good. My number 1, I'm a little disappointed here. You said that we didn't have any overlap, and unfortunately we do. We do have one overlap. My number 1 has been said, and I thought this was going to be a little bit more controversial when it happened. Mr. Mime. I think it's pretty clear. It's pretty obvious. Yes. Mr. Mime is number 1. There's like, I was hoping to get a shocked look from you, but when you said that, I was like, oh man, I was sad, but I'm also happy that we shared this one. But yes. I was sad that I wasn't going to be able to get like a surprise reaction.
Talk your talk. Explain why this has to happen.
Well, I don't know if mine's as deep-seated as yours. We're all curious, right? We're all curious, and it's not allowed. Society doesn't allow it. So when we're talking about Pokemon, which are, more like animals, according to Christian, this is an exact word. So if they are like animals and not humans, what would you be the most excited to try? Well, something I'm not allowed to try in real life because society says it's unacceptable. Let's get Mr. Mime out here and see what's going on. Plus, if anyone's, watched the show, there's something not right there. Mr. Mime, there's just something a little off.
There's something right.
Right, it's like I don't even feel bad.
Welcome to 21 Questions, where Matt Lane reveals that he's just cannibal curious. Just cannibal. That if it wasn't such a social faux pas, that given the opportunity, are you a vampire? That would explain so much about you if you were a vampire.
The company that I would be joining if we tried it wasn't so out there. We would have to give it a go. Anyway, that's been 21 Questions.
So happy about this.
Braden's Hope. Thank you guys so much for asking questions. Thank you, Josh, for joining me. We appreciate it, guys. We'll be back next week with another episode. And there's Jack Link's Mr. My Beef Jerky of me presented by Josh. That is perfect. Thank you guys so much for listening. Bellsprout was also on the menu for reasons.